Today is the day where pre-planned content bit me in the ass. Welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. Let's do this. Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JessieNeoTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. Today is the day that pre-planned content bit me in the ass. This was on my agenda for today. I was supposed to be rating Arsenal's transfer window, and I'm still going to do it, but I'm sure the ratings are not going to be high, so there you go. We're going to do this anyway, though, because I do think that there is a conversation to be had about the risk that we've taken in this window and the risk that we will be taking for the rest of the season. Arsenal are in a position where we need to get it back into European qualification or European competition, and the right one, not Conference League, so Europa and higher. And we had a very good month in December and then had a horrible month in January. And so when you look at it, after that terrible month, a lot of people banked on us going into the window and improving and making sure that we brought at least a striker to the table, because that is really what we're missing. Because as annoying as they've been this season, Thomas Partey and Xhaka, will probably be available, hopefully, for the majority of the rest of the season. But no matter who's available for the striker position, it's just not good enough. And so I think a lot of us assumed that we would go into the window and make improvements, and we didn't. And so this is a risk. This is a very big risk, because anything goes wrong, and not only our hopes of top four go down the drain, but potentially even Europe at all. And, people may think, oh, you're just being dramatic. Of course we're going to make top six. And I'm just like, we have no divine right to make the top six. We're sitting in sixth place right now. I think tied on points with Tottenham, and they have additional games in hand. And so Wolves sit maybe 2 points behind us. West Ham doesn't look like they're slowing down anytime soon. And it seems like Manchester United have found some bit of form. So we have to keep it 100 and be realistic that it's not out of the realm of possibilities that the choices that we've made can end up being a huge risk, and we may not get a reward for it. And I've seen the positive takes on the window. I've seen this is a good thing because we're going to have so much money in the summer window. But I have to be honest, having a lot of money to spend in the summer window won't mean much if we can't offer European football. And the best possible targets that you can look at in the summer window will probably want Champions League. So we have to make our targets now. And that's really where my focus is now. Like, this will probably be my last conversation really about the transfer window. I woke up this morning and I didn't really feel anything about it. Like, it's over. Like, it's over. They've made their bed. Now we have to see how it feels. And so we may get to the summer and say that risk was totally worth it. Now we can go into the summer and get our number one targets, and we have Champions League / European football to offer. Or we can look back at this moment where we decided not to improve the squad and miss out on our targets. And even though we have the money to spend, we won't be able to attract the right type of players to take us to the next level. And the other part of this that becomes a little bit frustrating is it's not just about the players that you can bring in, it's also re-signing the stars that you have. And the first report that I saw this morning was about Arsenal looking to give Bukayo Saka a new contract. And I'm just like, we have got to make sure that we are competitive. This kid is being looked at. I'm not going to call him a kid. This young man is being looked at by the top clubs in Europe. They are looking at him, they are scouting him, and they are looking at us like, if you are not competitive sometime soon, we're going to start tapping him up. There are already photos of Klopp, arm around his shoulder, Liverpool supposedly looking at him, and they're obviously starting to build that next generation of Liverpool attack. And so it may seem a little bit trigger happy to start talking about this now, but if we are talking about trying to sign him up to a new deal, we are talking about having to be in a competitive situation where we can get our stars to resign. And I'm looking at Bukayo Saka and Martinelli in particular, two players that are definitely at this point going, their trajectory is so scary that I feel like they will outgrow us quickly if we don't become more competitive. And competitive for me means that we need to be knocking on the door for top four, if not making it into the top four this season. And not getting any reinforcements in the window makes that just even more difficult than it already was going to be. So there you go. That's really the conversation that we're having. And I don't want to come off like somebody that's trying to paint a negative picture of Arsenal, because there are a lot of positive things that have come out of this season, but it will be all for naught if we don't make our targets. And that's really the reality of it. So yeah, but that's what we're going to be talking about. I want to see what you guys are saying. And then we'll go through the signings that we did and did not make. C. Wilder says Pepe up top. Won't say it again, the stream, promise. Lucas says, let's go. Mo the First is saying best window. We're looking for quality and we couldn't find quality, so we wouldn't settle for less. I have to be honest though, like I hear that part of it, that the most optimistic of optimistic Arsenal fans will say that, oh, in this window, we were showing that, we're not going to do short-term solutions and we're going to stick with the plan. I mean, one of the first things that I saw when I woke up this morning was something, I think, from the Athletic saying that, Arsenal looked to see if they could move things forward and they couldn't. So they stuck with the plan. And, that's different than things that they've done in the past. And I don't know, there were reports that we had went to Espanyol and Real Sociedad and Benfica on the last day of the window looking to buy their players. So if you were so stuck on the plan and you were not really looking to buy anything but your number one targets, why, after we went after Vlahovic, didn't we just say we're not going to go after any strikers? If you're on deadline day calling clubs up asking about their players and seeing if you can bring them in, that doesn't really seem like a team or a club that is 100% like going after their plan. It kind of feels like we knew we needed a striker, we couldn't make a deal work, and now we're going to kind of spin it into we were being like super picky and we wanted to make sure that we got the perfect deal. And I think it's something in between the two. It's not quite we were, desperate and couldn't figure it out, but it's definitely not we just stuck with the plan and we were being like no. If we were able to negotiate a deal lower for De Thomas or Morata or Nunez, we probably would have brought them in. So I'm really not trying to, I get where they're trying to come from with this whole, we had this grand plan for the summer and all of that, but we were definitely in this market looking for a striker because we knew we needed one. And so I'm sure the club knows that this is a huge risk. Let's see. SK says, I think the only reason they didn't sign anyone is because they don't know if they don't finish in Europe, there is no consequence. There is, I think, a part of that is true. I think some of the decisions that Edu and Arteta have made since they've been in charge at Arsenal kind of speak to the safety, the safeness of their positions at Arsenal. And so, if your job is on the line, you buy a striker in January, you do. But I think Arteta feels like he has enough of a leash. Edu feels like he has enough of a leash. Arteta's obviously going to get a new deal before we even see what's going on with the rest of the season. They are, and that was another report that came out this morning, that they're so convinced that Arteta is the guy to take us forward. And it's nice that they're committed to somebody and they're willing to back a manager, but it's scary that it's Arteta because it's the guy that has no experience, the guy that's very heavy-handed in the way that he deals with things, and the guy that really doesn't have the CV to back up this level of grace, So it's scary, but I do think they're really safe in their positions, and so they can make decisions and make mistakes and feel like it's fine because there's really no consequences for it. I mean, there are a lot of managers that have gotten fired for less than what Arteta and Edu have done over their time being at Arsenal. And so I think there is some truth to that. Let's see. Lucas is saying Man United, Tottenham, West Ham, everybody's struggling. Arsenal def with chances going Europe, Wolves, Villa with Coutinho may surprising everyone. Yeah, I mean, I guess the only teams I'm really worried about right now are Man United, West Ham, and Tottenham. I think I get the Villa conversation because they had like this great window, but they brought in Dina and Coutinho and Callum Chambers. Like that's not that great of a window. And even though, they're playing nice football, they're not winning a lot of games. So maybe I'll let them creep up the table a little bit more before I get like too worried about them. I think Wolves are the closest team, but they don't really score that many goals. So we'll see. But I think it's West Ham and Tottenham and Man United are the teams that are really in that spot trying to go after top four. And Tottenham strengthened. And here's the thing about, well, nobody else did anything, so it's okay for Arsenal not to. They have different situations. We can't just look at what other teams did and say, oh, well, Chelsea didn't strengthen, so it's fine that we didn't. We don't have the same quality that Chelsea have. Like they have a more balanced squad than we do, and they're in a completely different situation than we're in. So for Arsenal, it doesn't matter, that other people struggled to bring players in. We needed to bring somebody in and we didn't. And so that was a choice made by the club. And I get that. But looking at everybody else's, situation and saying, well, since they didn't, it's fine. Man United didn't really have to strengthen because they have a strong enough squad. They just have to just start playing better. Tottenham, they didn't really strengthen their squad. They did bolster it a little bit, but they have forward players that can bail them out of jail when they don't even play well. When I look at Man United and Tottenham, I see two teams that don't have to play well and still can get 3 points. We don't play well, we don't win the game. There's no way. We have to play damn near perfect in order to get away with it. And that's really the difference between us and the other teams that are fighting for top four. West Ham is a little bit different. They've been in a crazy run of form since last season that has not stopped. And everything just came together for them to be a very, very strong team this season and last with Moyes, the way that he coaches them and everything. So they're a little bit different. But Arsenal are a team that have to be perfect 11, playing perfectly. And the other team kind of has to be, I hate to say this, but they kind of have to be a little bit shit for us to just keep winning games. And so I think that when you look at that, the situation that we're in, we really needed to bring in somebody that when we don't play that well. So for midfield, if Thomas Partey and Xhaka are not available or they're not playing well, there's somebody to step in and keep that level up or improve the level. And then you also needed a striker or somebody up top that can bail you out of jail, like Lacazette should have been able to do against Burnley when you're not really playing well. Those are the players that we're missing. So the difference between our squads makes it kind of like a moot point to say, well, nobody else strengthened because we're in a completely different situation. Matt G, hey, how are you? Hope you guys are doing okay. Like in the grand scheme of things, like the window is over. So this is pretty much the last conversation I'm going to have about it because it is what it is at this point. We have to we'll move on, but we do need to kind of like just wrap it up with a bow. Enzo says, with the current squad, we have only 17 games left. We can still make top four. Of course, we can still make top four. The odds for us making the top four went down massively, though, after we didn't beat Burnley. That was a game that should have been 3 points in the bag, and it just wasn't. And so we have to make up the points somewhere else. And so when I look at it, I'm like, we had a better chance before the Burnley match. And I would love to see the odds now that we didn't make any signings. And I'll tell you this for sure, because I do shows with rivals. It was like a sigh of relief for rival fans to see that we didn't do anything, because they feel like we took the pressure off. They feel like Arsenal let them off the hook, because now that they're playing better and we went through a bad period, they're not really as afraid as they were before about us making the top four. So I do think that the 17 games kind of help and all of that, but the odds have really went down since, we didn't beat Burnley, and I'm sure they probably went down after we didn't strengthen. So, I think our chances are slim to make top four, but they're still there. But we have to be damn near perfect. And Arsenal are rarely perfect. We go through these periods of the season where we just play shit for a long time. And yeah, there you go. Top Bin says, just judging from the lack of activity in the market yesterday, it looks like everyone is going to have a big summer transfer plan. Top four is a necessity. That is definitely a good point, Top Bins, because I looked at somebody like West Ham, who are above us in the table. You can say they're in better form than we are. And they were putting in huge bids for Rafinha, Calvin Phillips, and Darwin Nunez. And so if they finish above us, and they definitely have the money to play ball, how are we going to attract the players that we want to? Manchester United are obviously planning for a big summer because they will get a new manager, so they'll spend big. Tottenham will obviously try to keep Conte by spending big. So this idea that because we have all this money, we're going to be able to get in front of the queue, it doesn't mean anything if we don't finish in front of these people. It does not mean anything if we don't finish in Europe, if not top four. So, this I get wanting to see the bright side, but this transfer kitty that people think we're going to have doesn't really mean anything, because other teams have money. And if they finish up in front of us, we're going to have a hard time attracting, because everybody's going to be looking for strikers and midfielders. Everyone. Those are the two positions that everybody is looking at, and everybody's looking at the exact same players. Declan Rice, Calvin Phillips, Basuma, Douglas Luiz. Everybody's looking at the same players. Boubacar Kamara, Awar. People were looking at Bruno Guimaraes, but he's obviously gone now. Everybody's looking at the same players, and everybody's looking at the same strikers. So whatever our striker situation is in terms of who we're looking at, the only way we'll be able to attract them is if we're in front of West Ham, if we're in front of Tottenham, if we're in front of so-and-so. And that's important. Let's see. I saw Jose Flores says the thing about backing Arteta is they are backing him by bringing in players that do have value, potential, and versatility. So if the plan doesn't work, the next manager shouldn't have to rebuild. Yeah, I get that point. And I do think the project is a lot more attractive than it was like before Arteta came in. So that's one of the positives that came from him being here. Let's see. Just going to get some of your comments before we go through what happened and what didn't. CC said, exactly. All teams are going to go big in the summer. Exactly. That's why I'm kind of like, and then there's the question about, Edu. And, I think there's a bigger conversation to have around him in particular. I have my own issues with Arteta, but I said this yesterday on the Football Terrace that if I had to choose between one or the other, Arteta or Edu, who would I get rid of in order to improve kind of the board, to improve that part of Arsenal? I would get rid of Edu and keep Arteta. And the reason for that is that I think Edu's ceiling is quite low, and his sphere of his connections, his experience, and his relationships don't really serve us. And take Liverpool, for example, which is a club that Arsenal fans like to liken us to, because we looks on the surface like we've done something similar. had a big window where we addressed a bunch of, players at once, and at a certain price range, and now we're going to go big and get our Van Dijks or our Allisons in this window. But the difference between Liverpool and us is that the recruitment is light years ahead of ours. Their recruitment is astute, efficient, and intelligent, and ours is not. The way that Luis Diaz is something different, but the Carvalho guy that they got from the Championship for like 5 million or something like that, that is not a move that Arsenal can do. We don't have the same level of recruitment. We don't have the DOF that has the vision to see players that are at lower levels and be able to pick them out based on Klopp's philosophy and all of that, and give them to Klopp so that he can make them into better players. Edu doesn't have that. We're so lucky that we have Saka and ESR and Martinelli. And I get that people say, well, Edu was Martinelli. He wasn't. That deal was like 90% done, and he just tied it up with a bow. Like, we're so lucky that we have those players, because if Edu had to recruit those players for us, we'd be shit out of luck. The guy he's not good enough. And we would do so much better with somebody like a Luis Campos or an Overmars, somebody that whose connections and relationships can get us into markets that are suitable for our needs. We don't recruit in the right places. He's always coming with some guy that's kind of on the outs, that's on big wages to try to patch things up. And, I like our tour, but the 18-month loan smelled, it stunk. It did. It stunk of, we just want to get this guy's wages off of us. Juventus was like, we want to get his wages off of us. And Edu said, I can find a place for him at Arsenal, and then we can hopefully help him get into the Brazilian national team. How does that help us? Like, if you have somebody that may or may not be a starter on 135K a week for 18 months, that could potentially hurt our ability to make moves in the transfer window when we really need to. So when I look at it between, the players that he brought in the first go round, and then also Willian, his inability to get Aouar over the line, how he waited until the very last minute to bring in Thomas Partey, when if you couldn't get Aouar done, you should have went for Thomas Partey earlier so he could have gotten adapted quicker. There's just some things where I'm like, I look at the other moves that teams are able to make in the markets that they shop in. We just don't have the same abilities. And I think it's because of Edu. And maybe if Arteta had better players or the right profiles were brought in, he would do better. He has his own issues, but I don't think Edu is serving us. I really don't think he's good enough. And he really needs to be looked at and reviewed, because I don't think he should be in charge of the summer window, because it's too big of a window for him to be taking over. Like, there's just no way, because we need to make 2 or 3 really big signings, and I'm not sure that he has it. So yeah, you have a big summer window coming up where everybody's going to be looking for the same types of players. Depending on where we're finished, it'll be a difficult window for us, and Edu is going to be trying to give us Kia clients. It's not good enough. But let's see. So I went through what happened in this window, and obviously we don't have much to talk about in terms of incomings. And most people that created their list of what happened in this window didn't put Matt Turner on there, which is a little strange, because I thought I guess it's because the club hasn't confirmed it, that he's an Arsenal player. I mean, almost everybody has said that he's an Arsenal player, so I would imagine that he is. But in terms of the window, Kolasinac went on a free, Chambers went for an undisclosed fee, Marie went on a straight loan, Maitland-Niles went on a loan, Balogun went on a loan, and Aubameyang went for free. And it was a mutual parting of ways. And then we got Austin Trusty that is a permanent, but was loaned straight back to Colorado. Who knows what that's all about? I don't even think we really. I have to be honest, that's a strange one that I don't think really has much to do with Arsenal. I can't imagine us ever seeing him play for Arsenal, but that's pretty much what we got done. And what you see there is that we really haven't recouped much money for anybody. A report came out earlier this morning, if I can find it, about Maitland Niles. Um, there were reports about, Jose Mourinho wanting to bring in Granit Xhaka and Maitland Niles on some sort of discount. We have got to move on from Granit Xhaka this summer. I don't care how little the fee is at this point, give him away so we can move past this, because we're not going to get a big fee for him. He had his best season at Arsenal last season, and the only team that came in for him was Roma, and they wanted to play 12 million. When they come back this summer, they will want him for cheaper, and we need to sell. Like, it's done. But I'm trying to look for it. Maybe I didn't retweet it, but it said something about Maitland Niles, and that Roma are happy with Maitland Niles, and they're looking to trigger the clause that he has in his contract with them to make him permanent. And so Maitland Niles will probably go for somewhere between 10 and 12 million at the end of the season. But that's what we did. And we did get rid of a lot of wages. Arsenal are pretty much the only club that I know of that where the fans are all accountants, and we're very like engrossed in the money that we are spending on players and the wages that they're getting. But Kolasinek's wages, Chambers' wages, and Aubameyang's wages were huge. So getting them off the wage bill is a big deal and something that should help us in the future. But Maitland Niles, to me, is the one that really stands out because of when he was let go to Roma. There's something about this club where players are running away from the club. And I get that. You can look at it one of two ways, that Arsenal is not a place where players can just sit around and on big contracts and wait around and not contribute and disrupt the group. So players are basically cutting and running because they don't want to be there and it's an uncomfortable place to be. Fair enough if that's the way that you think of it. But I think there's the way that Arteta manages the group of players, and especially the players that he's on the outs with, make it so that they're not even willing to finish the season with us. They're not even willing to just chill for a minute and just help us. Like, Maitland Niles could not be asked like to stay for another 2 weeks just so that we could get through January, and he would have been useful against Liverpool in more than one position. We could have used him at right back instead of Tomiyasu, or we could have used him in midfield instead of Thomas Partey, and he would have been useful against Burnley. And we let him go at the very beginning of the transfer window, where he went to Roma to go play right back, and we didn't have a right back or a central midfielder. And that's the one that really stands out to me as stupid. Like, that's just what it was. And I get maybe Roma was like, well, if you want us to put this clause in here that will take him on an obligation, if this and that and the third, we have to get him now. But that's where you need somebody that can just kind of soften the situation a little bit and make a deal that is good for Arsenal. Getting rid of Ainsley Maitland-Niles when we did was naive. It just was. And so that's the one that stands out to me, because out of everybody, beyond Aubameyang that was let go, that includes like Marie and Balogun, Maitland-Niles is the one who played the most. And so he was our utility player, and we just gave him away, and it hurt us. It did, because we're out of all the cups. Tomiyasu is got re-injured and he hasn't been seen in any training photos. So we don't know how long it's going to be until he comes back. Thomas Partey, maybe if Maitland-Niles was playing in midfield, maybe Thomas Partey plays against Burnley and we win. So it's a domino effect where I think out of everything in the transfer window in terms of outgoings, that pissed me off the most was Ainsley Maitland-Niles leaving early when he could have just left after the Burnley match. And I don't think and it couldn't have been that bad. Balogun loaning him out was the right thing to do. Maria's a strange one because there were rumors that came out that we had a deal from Titty, like Samuel Titty from Barcelona, wrapped up and ready to go. And that would kind of explain us getting rid of Pablo Marie. Because the thing is we need a left-sided center back. And I get that, a Tierney can play there, kind of, and, Tomiyasu can play there, maybe, but we need a left-sided center back. And for us to send Pablo Marie away, and now it makes sense to me is because Edu thought that he had the Umtiti deal wrapped up, but it fell through because what did he do? He injured himself in training. Shocker. He's been injured like his entire Barcelona career. So that's another one of those where that could come back to bite you if something happens with Gabriel. I mean, there's going to be a couple of players through these 17 games where we're going to be really looking at very closely, hoping that they don't tweak an ankle, that they don't go into a bad tackle. And Gabriel is definitely one of those. Ben White is one of those. Tomiyasu is one of those. Thomas Partey is one of those. And Lacazette is one of those, so it's rough, so, and the Umtiti thing may not be super reliable. I'm not sure, but that would make more sense to me than just getting rid of Pablo Marie and loaning him out. I get that you have Holding, but Holding, you would think that we would have two backup center backs that are just center backs. You know what I mean? So sending him away just because he wasn't getting playing time just seems a little, I don't know, but, yeah, the Pablo Marie one was weird to me. And then Chambers was fine. To me, I'm not really that worried about it. He wasn't playing anyway. Yes, I do think he's better than Cedric, but in Arteta's mind, I think he feels like maybe Cedric is better than Chambers. It's his funeral at the end of the day if that's what he really believes, and it doesn't go right. Kolasinac, not really worried about him going. I can't imagine anybody would be worried about us getting rid of somebody who's on 100 and something grand a week. Now we don't have to pay him, and he was never going to play anyway. So that's kind of how I feel about those outgoings. It just is what it is. And when it comes to Aubameyang, I feel like, he was a really important player to us for a couple of years. And it's a shame that the important players, especially the ones that we end up spending a lot of money on, always seem to be getting, like, as of recently, shuffled out of the back door. We never really get to see them leave with any sort of like happy ending. It's always some sort of cancel contract and send them on their merry way. And I'm happy for Aubameyang that he gets to go to Spain and hopefully, have a good career beyond Arsenal. Like, there's no love lost for me. Aubameyang was never my favorite, but he's a good player and he'll be perfectly fine at Barcelona. I just, it was probably too far gone. The reports had come out from The Athletic that, Arsenal are trying to change the culture around, and some of the things that Aubameyang has done since Arteta has been there, and it's been repeated offenses as well, undermine Arteta's authority and was not the right standards that are set for the culture. And so I get that. The issue that I have with the way that Aubameyang and the way that Ozil left was that it always came at a time where Arteta was heavy-handed, omitted them from the squad, banished them, whatever you want to call it. And there's always a gap between that player not playing for us anymore and the next person coming in. And that time that we spend without that important position being filled, our season goes down the drain. And what I mean by that is we went through the summer transfer window and chased Aouar the entire time. The entire time we chased Aouar. And we knew that Ozil was on the outs with Arteta. He was not even registered by Arteta. And in that transfer window, we couldn't get Aouar over the line. And so we spent 6 months of the season without a single creative player in our team. And that cost us. If we had won maybe one or two of those games in that period in November, we probably would have made top 4, because I think we missed it by 6 points. So that's how big that gap was between him being omitted out of the squad and us being able to bring in ESR in order to get our season back on track. We're in a very similar situation now with Aubameyang, where he has left, and in the window we were unable to replace. And so we will go a 6-month period without that very important position being filled. How costly will that be? I understand that morale is important. I understand that it was probably too far gone. So I'm not really making a statement on why we should keep Aubameyang, but I'm making a statement about why it was so important to bring in that striker, because there's going to be a long, long season to go without having that position filled. And we are banking our season on Lacazette being consistent and us not having to rely upon Eddie Nketiah to score goals for us. So in the future, whoever's running the club, whether it's Edu and Arteta or somebody else, what the club has to figure out is how we can move players on in a way that doesn't leave us in a position where we don't have somebody readily lined up to take over, where we don't feel that 6-month gap, where we don't have anybody to put in that position that makes us feel comfortable. We need to be able to pass the baton better in the future. And I just hope it doesn't bite us in the ass. But in regards to the culture shift and all of that, I'm okay with that. But when you're heavy-handed with the way that you discipline, you have to make sure that you have the replacement lined up. And we didn't do that. And so, again, it's their funeral. If it doesn't go right, massive risk, very much so banking on inconsistent and unreliable players to get us through the season. And hopefully they do, because our summer really rests on that happening. And I hope it works out for them. I really do. Let's see. I'm looking through your comments. JT says it seems like Arteta doesn't even see that strategy as a mistake. JT says freeze out one player, go all or nothing on one specific player at all costs. Think about plan B later. And this is why, the recruitment strategy for me is flawed as well, because it just feels like we get very fixated on one player, and we know that we don't have a backup. If you know you don't have a backup, and then you have to have more than one option. And so when you go into the transfer window and you know that you're not going to be able to use Aubameyang because you've iced him out, you can't just go for Vlahovic and not have something else lined up, alone, something. You have to have something there. You have to be a little bit more flexible in your recruitment strategy. And with Arsenal, it just seems like we get fixated on one person. We got fixated on Aouar. And I love Thomas Partey, but Aouar and Thomas Partey are two completely different players. And so Thomas Partey was never going to give you the creative, part of the game that you were missing once Ozil was omitted from the squad. And I'm not going to rewrite history and say that I think that Ozil was amazing, and before he was omitted from the squad, but he was better than nothing. Aubameyang is better than nothing. And so when you look at it, I just think that there's a way to go about recruitment that allows you to be a little bit more flexible, and there's more than one player that can solve your problem. I never really bought into Bruno, he's not our number one option and all this kind of stuff. He was one of our options. And so was the option either number one target or 18-month loan for our tour, or was there nothing in between? And that's where the transfer strategy for me lacks a little bit of it, or it is a little bit naive, because now we're sitting here 6-month gap. with no striker, you know? Coach Dave says to come out of the transfer window without any new players with fourth place in the balance clearly shows incompetence. Arteta out. Let's see. BK Gunner 81 says Awar or even Fakir would have helped us. And I'm like, was there not anybody else we could have looked at in that window that would have, and this is what I'm saying. Like, there are other teams that I watch the way that they recruit and they're able to source these types of players. I think in that same window, I think Norwich might have been going down that season that we were looking at Awar. Could we have not tried to get Buendia? We don't seem to have any sort of, like, it's all or nothing on one player. There's never a plan B. And I don't like our recruitment. I just don't think the resources that we have that are available to us through Edu are good enough. It's either number one target or our tour on an 18-month loan. There is something in between there. And that's my issue. James Benjamin says, Jess, has the club made themselves vulnerable to being overcharged in the next transfer period? One of the things is that it seems like they didn't want to overpay this window, but the striker market is still going to be quite the same in the summer. I'm not really sure what new options are going to be available to us in the summer that weren't available to us in this window. And because everybody's going to be looking for a striker, there's going to be so many clubs looking for strikers. Of course, it's going to be expensive. And so you're not going to be able to go to Real Sociedad and try to offer them that 60 million that you did this window. They're still going to ask you for the release clause. So I don't know what they have up their sleeve. Hopefully they have something really, really good up their sleeve, because they're going to charge us a lot. We're not going to get a lot of money for the players that we try to sell. And we're going to have to spend a lot on the striker and possibly the midfielder, especially if we don't make our targets, because we're going to have to overpay to make sure that they want to come, which means paying very high wages. Unless our recruitment policy gets better. Moot says, never in for Raul de Thomas or Nunez. Looked for late loans for a striker. Could not, as could not be priority targets. Shaqzilla says, biggest problem Arteta now has is the decent players do not see it as an appealing club. We don't get players other teams want. And the other thing is, the way that this looks, in terms of footballers talk, there's always the other side of the story. We always want to paint Arsenal as this club that's, a bunch of young players would want to come to, and it's very attractive. And it's more attractive than it was a couple of seasons ago, because we don't have so many nothing players on high wages. But the unattractive part of Arsenal is that if you're on the outs, you're really on the outs. And Aubameyang left London, did not want to come back, and basically wanted to force through that move to Barcelona. Willian paid to get out. Ozil was a circus. All of these big players on big money, if they act out, they're out. And we don't see, the ins and outs of everything, but there could be more to it. But I wonder how we look to footballers, how Arsenal is perceived. You can even look at, players like Guendouzi going out there and saying poor things about Arsenal to French players, Saliba, depending on how he feels about the club. So, we do seem more attractive, in one respect, but in the other one, in terms of how footballers see us, I think that's an issue. And then when you put that together with the fact that Arsenal are not that as competitive as they used to, I think that creates a cocktail that's not really beneficial to Arsenal right now. It's more attractive in some ways, but less attractive in others. And I think you want to also be a place that players want to come to and feel safe, that their career is not going to be ruined, because they came here and they made a mistake and then the manager iced them out. But maybe it will deter players like that from the club as well, players that don't like to follow rules and stuff like that. But a lot of times the good players sometimes can be troublemakers because they know they can get away with it. So that goes back to the conversation around, do you deal with different personalities differently, or do you have a blanket set of rules that every single player has to follow? These two different ways of management. And a lot of people see it differently. Jean Rene says, I think we did have a clear plan. Just plan A, we know. B, I would say Isak. C would be DCL and David. I'm happy that we didn't panic buy. Getting a 6-month loan seemed difficult this window. And I get that. Like, a lot of people feel that way, that, I'm glad we didn't panic buy. And I'm glad we didn't panic buy as well. I'm glad that they, vetoed the 18-month loan for our tour. But there were other opportunities in the market that we could have taken advantage of. I mean, I know that we're Arsenal and we should always want to go after the best possible player. So go after Vlahovic, but it's not like, Burnley didn't go get Wout Workhorst, for like 15 million. And he's better than Lacazette. He's going to score some goals. And so there were other opportunities to improve the squad. So I don't think it's so much that, there was no other options and the market was just so difficult. I think we just decide, like, whatever we tried to do just didn't work, So yeah. Let's see. Orpheus Jones says, a team who are fighting for survival aren't going to sell an asset in January. Come on now. Don't know what we're talking about. O'Shane says, Jess, I've told you before that Edu is incompetent and doesn't know the European market. Even if he doesn't know the European market, one of the things that they sold to us, because I remember the PR that came with Edu and Arteta when they first signed, or when they first came to Arsenal. And Edu's thing was that he had like an in with the South American market. Have we seen the fruits of that? Like, have we seen anything from that? No, we haven't. So if you don't have, like, why do we not have the South American market cornered? Why are we not getting more Martinellis? Like, if they brought us more Martinellis, I would not be bitching. Like, I'm telling you, I would be, good to go. But it feels like we are looking at Kia's client list and picking from, the best possible players that we could from there. And that's not good enough. That's not good enough. So yeah, there will be more options in the summer, but can we get them? Will they be interested in us if we don't finish in Europe or Champions League? Will they be significantly less expensive? I'm not sure, so we'll definitely see what happens there. But yeah, and I don't know much about Austin Trusty, you guys, in terms of the guy that we brought in. Again, that just feels like something that we did for the benefit of the Colorado Rapids and KSE. So we'll see what happens with that. And Matt Turner, that one feels like it did happen, but he obviously has to stay at the New England Revolution for the rest of the season. And so he will be a good little backup goalkeeper for us. And, we're willing to sell Leno for $5 million. And that is very, very cheap for Leno. We ain't getting no money. Like, we're not going to get anything for Leno and Xhaka in the summer. Like, we're not. So just move them on. Forget it. Tony says our MLS ties are better than the South American market. I mean, at least bring us the absolute best players for the MLS. Like, I mean, if it was somewhat of like a little scheme where they try to bring in the best players to the Colorado Rapids and then they come to us, then I'm for that scheme. I'm not concerned about star players. I'm concerned about the recruitment policy giving us players that fit what we're trying to do. And Arteta can coach them up and make them into the players that they should be. Because the whole thing about Arteta is he's supposed to be this great coach. So I'm not too worried about, okay, we need to go out and get Mbappe. But what I am concerned about is that we're being brought Artur and Willian and kind of like nothing else. And it was well documented in the summer that Arteta had to kind of veto some of Edu's recommendations for goalkeeper and other positions And that's how we ended up with White and Ramsdale instead of some more Kia clients. And so he has to be watched, like, and that's not a good thing. And so if you're not bringing us the South American gems, and all the Martinellis, what are you bringing us? What are you bringing us? What are you bringing us? Make sure you guys like the video. There's like 260 of you guys in here. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. So, yeah, it's difficult to rate this window because even though I'm okay with the outgoings, like Kolasinac, that's perfectly fine with me. Like the Chambers thing, it is what it is. He was going to leave on a free anyway, right? And he wasn't getting much minutes. Marie, strange one because we only have one backup center back. So we'll see how that works out for us. Hopefully Gabriel doesn't get injured. Maitland-Niles is really the one that really just kind of like, oh, that did not sit well with me. And Aubameyang is kind of like, if he was never going to come back into the squad, then we kind of needed to offload his wages. I don't think it would have been better for us to wait into the summer and try to sell him because nobody would have bought him on those wages. He was going to run his deal down, or we were just going to be loaning him out straight loans, so just getting rid of his wages altogether makes a lot of sense. But I just hate the way that he went out the back door. And again, Aubameyang is not my favorite dude, but at the same time, there's something to be said about the way that, all of these like players are not just sold and it's normal. It's cancel contract, get out, and that's weird. So in terms of outgoings, I'm okay with it. But in terms of no incomings, I have to say that still kind of stings just a little bit. Let me go back up. I think I missed a super chat. Where did it go? It was a long time ago. There it is. This is for the Truth Sets Free. Thank you so much for your super chat. The Truth Sets Free says, putting even more pressure on the young players not to get injured for the remaining 17 games due to no incoming signings. Great call, Stan. I mean, it does put a lot of pressure on the young players, but it needs to put pressure on Xhaka, Thomas Partey, and Lacazette. Those are the players that need to feel the majority of the pressure because they're the ones that when they don't play well or when they're not available, we fall apart. Saka, Martinelli, all of them, they're still learning. I'm not going to put the season on them. It will be because the senior players don't perform or they're not available. So the pressure really needs to be on them and they need to show up because Xhaka and Thomas Partey have been actually absent for the first part of the season. And going back and watching the Man City game, I'm like, if they could play like that for 80% of the back end of the season, we'll be fine. But if they go missing or Thomas Partey acts like he was like when he was saying he was a 4 out of 10 or Xhaka just goes into every game trying to get a red card, we're done, and so that's the risk that they're really taking. Rapstar, thank you so much for your super chat. Rapstar says, the fact that you guys use January to move who you can on shows me you folks setting up for another big summer. Fans need to be patient and wait. Success takes time. Only concerns would be the recruitment. Exactly. I always had a feeling that we would have a big summer, meaning that we would bring in 2 to 3 players. They would be bigger signings. That midfield signing would finally come in. Xhaka would finally leave the club. And we'd bring in a striker and maybe a right back or something like that. Or even maybe another attacker. We really need 2 midfielders. Let's keep it 100. But we may not be able to get everything that we want. But I hear what Rapstar is saying in terms of being patient and all that kind of stuff. But I stayed true to what I said, that even though I know we're going to have the money and we freed up the wages to hopefully not have to sell to buy, because if I hear sell to buy this summer, I'm just going to be like, I'm just not trying to hear it. But it does not matter if you don't meet your targets. It does, but it doesn't. If you finish in 7th or 8th, the recruitment has to be even better. And Edu's credentials are shady, so if I knew that we had a Luis Campos or, an Overmars that could find those gems and could bring in young players from, Europe in that $20 to $30 million range that really took us to the next level, more Tierneys and Odegaards and stuff like that, I'd be cool. But I don't think Edu really has that in his locker, like really. I think he wants to do big splashy signings. I think he was the one that was probably really pushing Vlahovic. And that doesn't work if you don't have backup plans and you're not ready to walk away when it's freaking obvious that you can't get the player. So the recruitment is a concern going into this summer because I'm not convinced that it's good enough, but the money will be there and hopefully we'll be in a position to take advantage of it. But I think there's just huge questions, and I'm trying to figure out what day I can get Sophie on to do the midseason review, but we will be reviewing Arteta and Edu and the team and the signings that came in the summer during that, and do a more in-depth conversation about that. But Edu's on fraud is on fraud watch for me for sure. Let's see. Yo-Yo says AMN, Hecky B returning in the summer. Edu's inability to earn much money from sales remains to be my greatest concerns. Think Arteta inherited a squad good enough to be in Europe and has had long enough time. Well, those are two different things. What I will kind of piggyback on is the players that are going to be coming back this summer, because they're coming back. Hector Bellerin, Torreira, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, I think they'll trigger the clause, Yo-Yo. It's already kind of been intimated that that's something that's going to happen. And maybe that was why we were so desperate to move him on, was because he had to go then in order for them to put that clause in there. But Torreira, Hector Bellerin, they'll be back. And Fiorentina, you got some money. Okay. Fiorentina got money for Vlahovic, so they need to buy Torreira. No more of this loaning, straight loans or whatever. But can Edu get money for Torreira? Can he get somewhere for Hector Bellerin to go? We don't need more El Nenis. We don't need players that are out on loan that we end up having to keep because we can't get rid. Like, we need these players to go. And so he will have to sell some players. I'm going to be very interested to see what he does with Hector Bellerin, Torreira, and Granit Xhaka. I think those are going to be the players that I'll see it, because I really don't think he'll get much for them. I think it'll be more tearing up contracts or whatever, especially with Xhaka and Hector Bellerin. But we'll see. And I do hold those same concerns because it's not a sustainable model to spend a lot of money and not recoup it anywhere. And we've been woeful at selling for a long time, but Edu has kind of continued on that trend, and hopefully he gets better and better soon. Upon menu. Sorry if I butchered that, but thank you so much for your super chat. Says it was time to go with Abba. He single-handedly carried a bang average team to a FA Cup trophy. I will always love him for that. And I would say that I'll amend that a little bit. I think Aubameyang and Leno carried us to that FA Cup, or Aubameyang and Martinez, sorry, they carried us to that. Martinez was a big part of that as well, and that's what a big reason why people were upset that he left. Aubameyang, that was the last time that I considered him world class. Really, was when he was playing against Chelsea and scored that goal. And I do think that, I mean, that's a big reason why Arteta's still in the job, isn't it? Is that he won the FA Cup, and so people are convinced that he's a generational manager. So it is sad the way that it kind of went down. And no matter what player it is, even if it's somebody that I really don't like, or not really don't like, but they're not my favorite player, I still don't want them leaving out the back door and there to be some sort of like heaviness to it. It doesn't make me feel good. And I would like more players to be able to leave like Ramsey did. I was there when he did his little like goodbye and cried and all that kind of stuff. And, more players should have that at Arsenal. And it just sends a better message across, the footballing world, that we're not this place that you're just shoved out the back door, when your time is done. And so, Aubameyang has some great memories from Arsenal, but ultimately, quite similarly to Ozil, he was kind of made to carry a very average Arsenal team, and ended up leaving in such a gross way, and that's really not what you want. Let's see. The Truth Sets Free, thank you so much for your super chat. The Truth Sets Free says, after I did that super chat, you're right. I realized the older players have that pressure not to get injured and not to get sent off. Step up to take the pressure off young boys, young guys, and actual win. Yeah, I think the pressure will still be on the young players. Like I'm saying personally, I don't look at them like, oh, they need to be doing. No, I don't. I'm looking at Lacazette, Thomas Partey, and Granit Xhaka. They have to do it. They have to be consistent. They have to stand up. They have to be smart. They have to make the right decisions, and they have to lead this young team because we are under pressure, and the young players will feel that pressure. They will feel that a lot of things are resting on them. And so it is up to that midfield in particular to take that pressure off because when they play well, we play well. And so it's important. But yeah, if Granit Xhaka and Thomas Partey and Lacazette don't do it, then it's finished. And that's one of the things I don't like, relying upon players that are as Clive would say, in the departure lounge, because I never really feel like they're 100% committed to what we're doing. And Lacazette, to his just he has tried really hard, even though we know that he's leaving at the end of the season. But even still, you want somebody that has the same hunger that players that are actually going to be here and are going to have to wear the consequences and the results of where we finish. That's really what you want, especially in your striker, and we don't really have that. And they better not give him a new contract. They better not try to give him a new deal. They have got to let that man go. I still see people saying Lacazette should stay for 1 or 2 more seasons. For what? For what reason? Enzo says we have enough young players. Now we need established, experienced players this coming summer. The only way you're going to get them, Enzo, is if you finish in the Champions League. I think if we finish even in Europa League, we'll be looking at players that are a little bit younger that see Arsenal as a step up. But if you want to get players that are in their prime, they have to feel like they're going to be competing for trophies in their prime. And so you look at somebody like Basuma, who I think just turned 25, he'll be going into his prime in his next contract needs to be at a club that he feels like is going to compete for trophies. So if you wanted to go for Basuma, I'm not saying that we do or we want to, but if we did, one, you have to have the 50 million or whatever it is to buy him off of Brighton. But you're going to have to finish in Champions League, because I think teams that finish in Champions League are going to look at him like Liverpool and Man United. I think they'll look at him. So without that, you're going to be kind of, asked out. The good thing is that I don't think Chelsea will go after him because they're looking at Tchouaméni. It's whatever one of Manchester United or Chelsea gets Tchouaméni, then the other one will get Declan Rice. I think that's how it's going to go. So like if Chelsea gets Tchouaméni, then Man United get Declan Rice and vice versa. So maybe if they go for those two, then, Basuma is still there. But you have other teams that are coming up behind you and are going to be around you that are going to look at Basuma. Even Spurs might look at him. So the better players that are going into their prime are going to want to go to teams where they feel like they'll potentially win something. And if Arsenal are not in 5th place or, 6th, but really close to the top 4, it's going to be difficult to really convince them, especially when you have a novice manager that doesn't have anything on his CV beyond that FA Cup that he won. Let's see. I need to sip my tea, you guys. Sorry. I've been talking a lot. All right. So Yo-Yo says, it was said that Edu only survived the last goal by attaching himself to Arteta and distancing himself from Raul. I'm not convinced Edu has the same relationship Arteta has with Josh. He doesn't, Yo-Yo. I think when you look at some of the things that have happened, like Arteta's ability to go over Edu's head and get the players that he wants and get more money from the Cronkies to do so, you can tell who has more clout with the Cronkies, and they back Arteta. But I don't necessarily feel like they feel the same about Edu. And again, I wouldn't be disappointed if like I woke up in a couple of days and they said that they're looking for a new director of football, because I feel like that could be a real game changer for us going into a really important window in the summer where it's going to be really competitive. A lot of teams are going to be spending a lot of money, and we really need to get every single signing right. And we also need to be able to sell and get rid of players. And so hopefully they look at this transfer window and see how he went full on for Vlahovic and Artur on loan for 18 months. And they vetoed that 18-month loan deal. So they need to look at that. We're still dealing with Kia. Kia is still our main intermediary. There's still a lot of things that are happening that to me just stink. And so hopefully they can look at it and say, you know what, maybe they stick with Arteta, but maybe we look to upgrade the DOF to try to get the best recruitment possible in a very important window. I wouldn't hate that. I really wouldn't. And it's like they want to bring in like Luis Campos and stuff on consulting and all that kind of stuff and take his scouts. Don't do that. Just bring the dude in. Like, just bring the dude in. Like, just bring him in, you know? Come on now. Let's see. Jean Rene says Laka's professionalism could be likened to Milner for us in a year or two. Depends on his performances now, though. So are you saying that you would give him a new contract? Is that what you're saying? Let me know. Because of his professionalism, let me know if that's what you're saying. Mood says, do you really think footballers look into club politics as much as the fans do? If Arsenal make an offer, they will look at the deal, not at how Abba was treated. They don't invest into all of this like us. That is not what I've been told. And I've spoken to several football players. And even if you listen to Curtis Shaw, who has played football at a pretty high level, footballers talk. They talk. So they may not be talking about the ins and outs of the politics, but they don't go to clubs that have a lot of drama around them, or they feel like, it's not a good place for their career. And you can't act like it's not something that somebody would look at. I get that the contract is important, the money is important, but footballers do talk. And, if you have too many instances of players being on the outs with the manager and the players are good and they're friends with them, like I never thought Dembele would ever come to Arsenal, because who's his best friend? Aubameyang. If Aubameyang feels like there was some injustice done to him, Dembele would never come to Arsenal. Like, footballers do talk, and I think we underplay it and think that as long as we pay them the money, they'll come. But good players have options. And so if it comes down to the same deal, but one team has a manager that everybody likes and good recommendations, and then the other one is Arteta, and they're asking Guendouzi about it, they're not coming, So I think we underplay it a little bit. It's not the main thing, but footballers do talk about that kind of stuff. JT says, I'm guessing 4 West Ham, 5 the Pricks, 6 Arsenal or Man U, 7 Man U or Arsenal, and that's if we're lucky. It's tough because I have to be honest, I think our ceiling for the season was probably 5th and our floor was 7th or 8th. And if we play more like we did in December, I think we could finish 5th. If we play anything like we did in January, we're definitely finished 7th or 8th, and it will be close. Like, we won't fall away too badly, but the squad is not good enough, and it needs to be playing at a high level, and we need to have more consistency. And so we saw that consistency for the majority, but you see how decent we think our season has kind of been, but we're still sitting there really in the pack. Like, it's really insane. Like, as bad of a season as Man United is having, and as good of a season we thought we were having after the Man City match, they're above us, and that's just the difference between the teams right now. Like, we have to be perfect, really. We have no margin for error because our team is not good enough. We don't have enough game winners and players to bail us out. And the manager is a novice, so there's things working against us. We have to be perfect. And we're also in a position where even when teams drop points, we don't seem to have the ability to take advantage of that, and that's an issue. The Truth Sets Free, thank you so much for your super chat, says Lacazette staying so he can get older and less clinical. No, younger guys with faster twitch muscles needed. I'm fully against Lacazette getting a new deal. And I think he is too. So, there you go. Saida says, question. Hey, Jess, do you think Arteta has the ability to improve his man management fairly quickly? If you look at when Brendan Rodgers was at Liverpool, it was said that his man management wasn't the best. I mean, potentially, I think he has the ability to improve. And I'm hoping that with the next group of players that are his players, Aubameyang and Ozil weren't really his guys. He re-signed Aubameyang, but in the moment, it kind of felt like something he may have had to do. You know what I mean? But this next group of players, hopefully he manages them better because they'll be his players. And so I'll be really interested to see what happens if, Martinelli steps out of line or Saka steps out of line or Ben White steps out of line. I don't think they will, but if they do, how he handles players that he brought in and if he'll be as heavy-handed with them as he has been with other players. But as players get better and they have different characteristics, they have different temperaments, they have different, they're just different. You kind of have to manage some players a little bit differently than others. And that's kind of what I believe. But maybe Arteta thinks this blanket way of dealing with people. And I don't know if it's really blanket because Xhaka has been treated differently than other players. Like he really, really has. But we'll see how he does in the future. But he really can't have another one of these, I don't think. It's just too much and it's too costly. Let's see. Dave Riley says, Jess, if Arteta doesn't make top 6 at worst, this guy has to go with Edu. And they're two separate things for me. Arteta, you guys know my bottom line is he has to make the top 6 to stay. And it depends on what kind of top 6 it is. Like he needs to be like a point or two off of the top 4. Really, he can't fall away. And that's being generous as well, considering he finished 8th 2 years in a row. But I think with Edu, for me, I don't think he has the ability to get better. I think he was a poor choice to bring in. I think we overrate the work that he does when you look at other teams and what they're able to accomplish and how quickly they are able to get deals done and how they're able to scout players throughout Europe at good fees. And of course, Arsenal will have to pay different types of fees because we're a bigger club. But that being said, we're not getting the most out of our recruitment. I just don't think we are. And if we're going to be a team that's trying to compete, we have to find an edge at every place that we can. You know how they use data to get an edge. They use different things to try to get like that small little margin. Recruitment is something that can get you a good margin. And I just feel like we are settling with Edu because he used to play for the club and he talks well and he wears nice suits and he's good looking and all this kind of stuff. And it's, where are the Martinellis? Like, bring me more Martinellis and I'll shut my mouth. But until then, I feel like we're being taken for a ride by Edu. And there are other DOFs out there. Overmars would probably come in a second. He has spoken about wanting to clean up the mess at Arsenal. And I don't think he's the best in the world, but I think when you're going for a youth project and, you need to be able to have like a self-sustaining model and be able to bring young talent through, and all that kind of stuff, Overmars would be a really good choice if you couldn't get Luis Campos. But I just don't understand why this club never goes for like the best. The best in the market is Luis Campos, and I think did he go to Real Madrid or no? Last time I checked, he didn't. So what are we doing? Yo-Yo says this, think it's dangerous for Arteta to not have checks and balances. The club is falling into the trap that got Wenger. Klopp wanted Werner and was given Jota sharpened knives. No, I hear what you're saying as well. Like Arteta has two, and we've spoken about this a lot, you guys. I would prefer Josh and whatever to be talking to the director of football and the director of football is creating the vision, managing the project, and hiring the people below to bring that to fruition. And so they have the they have the recruiting structure in order to get us the players that are right for his vision. They bring in the manager that can, or the coach that can carry that out on the pitch with the players that he's brought in. And I feel like it's a little bit backwards, and we are going back to the Wenger model. And Arteta also needs somebody to tell him that you're not getting a new player. You need somebody to say, you know what, you need to use this player, so patch it up. Because we're not going to give you a new striker. You just bought this one this long ago. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's what's really needed. But I also don't think Arteta would be the type of coach that could have a director of football with a really strong opinion, especially one that is closer to the owners than he is, because that's how he gets over. The closer he is to the owners, the more safe his job is. Let's see. Tony says, what striker and which CM do you want in the summer? I don't even know anymore. Because, when we were in the January transfer window and I was freaking out, I would have bit your hand off for anybody. But now that I'm really looking at it, you can kind of step back a little bit. And it's going to just be so difficult because the striker market is not a good one. And we may potentially need 2 strikers as well, which is tough, So I think if their main target was Vlahovic and they were ready to go as far as they were going to go with him, I think you need to bring in something that's similar to that, don't you? Because Isak and Vlahovic are nothing alike. And so I wonder if you can maybe go after Dominic Calvert-Lewin instead, because Isak is a little bit more of a player that can play out wide and stuff. He's really not a complete 9. I don't think Dominic Calvert-Lewin is either, but he's a little bit closer to that. But the striker situation is difficult, so I can't really give you a really solid answer on that, because I really need to look at it, and I'm hoping that other options pop up, because the options that are there just don't feel like obvious. It doesn't feel obvious like this is the perfect person to get. But in terms of midfield, I would like us to bring in 2 midfielders, somebody that could play as an attacking 8, so that we could move to a midfield 3 sometimes, and then a traditional number 6, so we could play in a midfield 3, but also play with a double pivot with Thomas Partey. So, and it depends, because I think Arteta would prefer to go towards a more Ruben Neves type, somebody with some passing ability, somebody like that. But I would like one of the midfielders to be Premier League proven. So I would take either Ruben Neves or Basuma, even though they're different. I prefer Basuma, but I would take Neves as well, to play in a midfield 3 or to play as in a double pivot with Thomas Partey. And then the second person that I would probably take, there's two players that I would take that could play as a left-sided central midfielder in a 3, or if you wanted to play him in the number 10 role, you could do that as well. And that would be like, you could bring in Houssem Aouar or you could bring in Tielemans. And I know Tielemans had a horrible game against Spurs, but when he has the players behind him, he doesn't have to be as two-way, but he is somebody that I think we need another attacking midfielder, like somebody that could play as an 8 or a 10 and has that playmaking ability through the middle, to play with Odegaard or without him. Because I'm not really seeing with ESR, and this is not a diss on ESR, but I don't see a number 10 or a number 8 in him at the moment. I think he's best out wide. So for that position, I would say I would take either Basuma or Ruben Neves for the number 6 role, and I would take either Aouar or Tielemans to play in a midfield 3, or number 10 role or something like that, an attacking left-sided midfield player, for options. I think we need 2 midfielders because El Neni will go. Xhaka will hopefully finally go, and that will mean that we'll only have Lokonga and Thomas Partey left. And so you kind of need two midfielders. So it's weird because we'll need two strikers and two midfielders, but I'm not sure we get them all. You could look at a free signing. You could, instead of going for a number 6 like Basuma, you could go for Boubacar Kamara and get him on a free, and then bring in, another midfielder, whoever you want, and then go for the two strikers. But we need two strikers and two midfielders, and so it's going to be difficult. But you could go after and he's just such an idiot. But maybe you could have went after Ivan Toney. He might have been a good option to bring in terms of an older option, But Ollie Watkins too. You could look at him as not the main striker, but the second striker, somebody that is, because you're going to need somebody else on the bench. But it's going to be an interesting summer, to say the least, because we need so many players. We also need a backup right back. So that needs to get sorted. So yeah, but midfield, I kind of have a clear vision of what I would like to see in midfield, because I've been wanting that midfield to be fixed for so long. And we also need to future-proof our midfield beyond Thomas Partey, because he's not reliable. As much as that hurts me to say, he's not reliable. And so we need to figure that out. But let's see what you're saying. Emmanuel Banda is saying there is a possibility of getting Danilo for Palmeiras. He has a DM, and he is left-footed, quick, and technically gifted. I would love to see Edu get that done, because he's Brazilian. He should be able to get us in the front of the queue with that guy. But I thought that he looked pretty good, and it would be nice to bring in somebody in the 20 mil. And here's the thing about the CDM position, you guys, as well. If you're going to get a traditional CDM, I think you want to spend less on that than the player that's going to be going forward. So I would spend more on my 8 or my 10 than I would for my number 6, because I think you can find them cheaper. So if you could bring in a Danilo or a Boubacar Kamara and keep that signing below 20 million, you can spend more money on the attacking 8/10 and then spend more on the striker. So, but we need to plug these holes. I would look at Origi. I would. Here's my thing is, no shame in my game. We need two strikers. We need one backup and one main striker. You could try to bring in Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Origi. Done. Done. But we need two strikers. Nashville Gunner says Calvin Phillips. I saw West Ham put in a big bid for him over the window. I don't think Calvin Phillips he's not somebody that I like. He seems I feel like he's hype. I do. But he's definitely better than kind of what we got. But I wouldn't pay 50 million for him, because I feel like you can get a better midfielder somewhere in Europe for that. Hector Soul says Aston Villa will never sell us Ollie Watkins for a fair price. That is true. So, but this is where recruitment comes into play. If you don't want Ollie Watkins, you could go for Jonathan David. They're similar-ish, but Jonathan David you could probably get for 30 to 40 million, and then bring in another striker. So there you go. So there's still a lot of positions that need to be taken care of. But what we do know is that we didn't address them in this window. So it's a huge job for Edu that I don't think he's necessarily capable of doing, but we'll see what happens. For this window, just going back to the rating, it is funny. Again, this is, pre-planned content come to bite my ass, because I thought we would be really rating a window, but we're really just rating the little that we did and the players that we gave away. So long story short, I'm rating this window a 3.5. I think we didn't address midfield, not even with a loan, or striker, even with a loan. All the players that we got rid of, we pretty much just gave them away for free. Maitland-Niles, those 2 points that I just feel like he could have helped us in January, and we kind of gave him away too early. and there's just no way I can give this window a really good score because it's so risky, and it's a risk that needs to end in reward for Arsenal, or a lot of people are going to come back to this window and say, why didn't we spend the money? Why didn't we get it done? And so high risk, hopefully high reward. Again, it's their funeral. All right. All right. So let's go ahead and get out of here. I will let you guys know when I'm going to come on with Sophie to do the mid-season review, but going to keep the content going until we have to play against Wolves, doing match previews and stuff like that. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. At the height of the video, there was almost 300 people in here, which I love. Make sure you guys continue to come back. I know it's not as fun because we're not talking about what we could be getting in the transfer window, but still trying to create good content for you guys, even outside of the transfer window. So share this with a friend, get into the comment section, let me know what you guys think, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys. Oh, and also in the comments, let me know what you guys rated this window, and why. I rated it a 3.5. Do you think I was too harsh? Too nice? Let me know. Bye, guys.